everyone. Welcome back to our podcast. This is Jennifer Hidalgo along with author Sean Meek. Sean has a new book out titled In the Shadow of the Ark, which focuses on Genesis. And Sean's here with me again today to talk more about the story he's written. Sean, in your book, In the Shadow of the Ark, which is about, of course, the pre-flood world, but the main purpose that inspired you to write it is to show the truthfulness of the Bible. And in our podcast, we've discussed science a lot in relation to the book of Genesis. And I think what we know is that many of those who work as scientists claim to seek truth, but in reality, many distort the facts just to support their own religion of scientism.
Yes, unfortunately, that is true. They're more interested in promoting their atheism and their scientism, secularism, than looking at actually what science tells us, because science has nothing to say specifically about the creation of the earth, because the science is about making a guess, making a hypothesis, and then testing it to see if it can become a theory. Well, there's no way to test the creation of the earth.
Right.
There's no way to test even if the Big Bang actually had happened. There's no way to test it. And we're going to be talking a little bit about the Big Bang and astronomy and such today, because one of the things that evolutionists say is that the Earth is here because of a Big Bang that happened billions of years ago. Well, the problem with that is this. The Big Bang is an explosion that never actually happened, and the theory never was one, because the Big Bang theory is not a theory. It is a Big Bang story.
Okay.
No matter what they say on TV, it's not the Big Bang theory. It's a Big Bang story, because theories can be tested. Theories can be disproved. There have been many theories over the years that people thought were absolutely rock solid. Turned out to be completely false, because that's the way true science works.
Right.
And the Big Bang is one of those stories someone just made up. Now, understand this. First of all, you had to know until the 1960s, virtually all astronomers believed in what's called a steady state theory.
Okay,
Steady state was that simply the universe has been the way it has been forever.
Which is, what does that mean?
That means it's always been galaxies, stars, planets, always just going on the way it is. This way you see it now, but never changing.
Okay.
And this is called steady state. And the problem with the steady state theory is this. Energy and matter always decay. Everything always goes downhill. It's called entropy. Everything tends to fall apart.
Okay.
But the universe hasn't fallen apart.
True.
It's still in all the pieces are there.
Right.
So what you have to believe, if you want to believe in steady state, you have to believe that somehow, every so often, hydrogen atoms magically, mysteriously pop out of nothing. They're not made by something. They just pop out of nothing to restore to help keep entropy from completely tearing everything apart. And that doesn't make any sense, because things can't come out of nothing. And so, but they had to believe it because they couldn't believe anything. There was nothing else for them to believe.
Right.
They didn't want to believe in God, who had created the world a few thousand years ago. And by the way, God did not make the universe out of nothing. He made it out of himself, because he took the energy from himself, took a little bit of that, just a speck, and made the universe we see around us. Because God is so big. To God, the universe would be like your thumbnail, or your fingernail on your little finger. Even less than that to God. Because God is so great, God is so overwhelming, all-powerful. He took just a little fingernail worth of energy to create the universe, which we think is so enormous. And for us it is, don't get me wrong. It is for us. It's huge.
We can't even comprehend, can we? It's so vast and so...
Yeah, when you look at it, think of it, infinite God. How big is infinite? Well, there is no definition per se, because infinite by its nature can't be defined. It's just always, everything. But the universe is not infinite. There's clearly an edge to it of some sort. And that, well, in the 1960s, researchers at Bell Labs noticed, as they looked around the universe, they noticed that there was a 3 degree energy everywhere they looked. 3 degrees above absolute zero. And to them, this didn't make any sense, because the universe is steady state. It should be very erratic. It should be a little more here, a little less there.
Right.
I mean, think about the world. The world is not a steady state. We see things changing. We see where forests come in, and then over years they go away, and grasslands come in, but over time grasslands go away and forests come back. I mean, there's a constant change. It's just part of nature, but it's never steady. But so in a steady state universe, there should be all sorts of irregularities, but there wasn't. This 3 degrees above absolute zero was everywhere. And so they published that, and they couldn't figure out why. And then something else happened. About this time, people were looking at distant stars. They had better telescopes. They were able to see the distant stars a lot better. And they noticed that the stars in the distance looked redder than they ought to be based upon their chemical composition. They were redder. So why were the stars in the distant places redder? And if they looked at ones they thought were even further away, they were even redder. The redness did seem to shift from one place to another. So some astronomers took that and put it together with the steady state, the 3% rather, everywhere, and the redshift, came up with what they called the Big Bang. And a man named Hubble is one of the ones who first started this.
Right.
That's why they named the telescope after him. Then Hubble came with the Big Bang. And the idea was that a long time ago, billions of years ago, the whole universe was a size smaller than an atom. It was in this infinitesimally small speck, but the whole universe was there. It was this little speck jammed with energy, and then at some time in the past, again we're talking billions of years ago, for reasons they cannot explain, that little speck, instead of staying compact, exploded. And they say not only did it explode, but as it exploded out, it went faster. The explosion was faster than the speed of light, many hundreds of times, even thousands of times faster speed of light as it spread out into what became space. Because the Big Bang not only created the matter and energy, they say it created space. The space did not even exist before the Big Bang. The Big Bang created space, and it created time, it created matter, it created energy. All the things we know that God actually did, but they say the Big Bang did it. And they say that over the billions of years, as the universe has been expanding, because the Big Bang started out really fast, it slowed down eventually to what it is today. And then over time, that energy turned into matter, which we know is true. There's truth to that. That's what E equals mc squared mean. Energy equals matter times the speed of light squared. And so the energy turned into matter, and then eventually the matter became stars, and the stars exploded and became planets. And that's where they say Earth came from, is from bits of exploded stars that exploded many billions of years ago and became all that we see today. Now, the problem with that is this. First of all, there's no scientific way to test this.
Right.
All they can do is look at the evidence in front of them and make up stories about it. But the problem is, although the redshift is real in the sense that light will, if it's going away from you, if the frequency gets lower and lower energy is red. As the energy is higher frequency energy is blue. That's why you can have infrared lights, infrared photography, infrared things, because it's on a lower level of energy.
Okay.
And blue is a higher energy. And so they looked at stars, and they look mostly red. So you can say, well, see, the evidence is there. They're reddish, so it must be moving away from us. But here's the problem. Some of the stars, some of the galaxies are blue when you look at them through the telescope. The Andromeda Galaxy is a blue-shifted galaxy, which means it's heading right towards us. And if all things went on the way they are in several million years, it will hit the Milky Way. I don't think we'll have to worry about it ourselves, but but it would. If it kept going in the direction it's going, speed it's going, it will hit the Milky Way, and then there'd be one humongous crash. And that would really set things off. But here's the thing. If the Big Bang is true, then everything should be heading away from everything else.
Right.
The way people put it, and what they're saying, if the Big Bang is true, it's true. Imagine you have a little balloon, and you put little dots on the balloon. And then you start blowing up the balloon. The dots are not only going to get away from the center of where it started, they're going to get away from every other dot on that balloon. And they're going to, as you keep blowing, they're going to get further and further away. They'll never get closer. But the Andromeda Galaxy is moving towards us. And so when people saw that, and they pointed out, they were told to shut up. That doesn't fit the story. One man who really did research in this, who did not believe in the Big Bang at all, he believed much in the steady state, was a man named Halton Arp.
Okay.
Now, Halton Arp was an astronomer who had done many, many decades of astronomy, written many books, many papers, well accepted, well placed in the astronomy society, that part of science, until he came out with a book called Redshift.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, it's called Seeing Red.
Seeing Red.
Seeing
okay.
Red. And he proved, he didn't just say it, it was proof, that the redshift does not necessarily mean the stars are moving away from us. Because he would see quasars right next to galaxies. Now, quasars are massive things that put off a lot of energy, very powerful. And what he was seeing is quasars that were redshifted, and galaxies redshifted, but not the same redshift. But he also saw that between the quasar and the galaxy, there was matter transference. The quasar was pulling matter off the galaxy. And they were close enough so they could do that. So they had to be within, hundreds of thousands of light years. Mm-hmm. But the redshift indicated they were millions of miles apart by the redshift.
Okay.
And when he published this, and again, this wasn't just a story. This is what he had proven by his observations and testing. Well, when he did this, he was blacklisted.
Oh.
He was one of the first people in what we today call cancel culture.
Because he didn't go with the flow.
Because he didn't go with the story.
Yeah.
He didn't go with the narrative.
That was the narrative, that's right.
And because he didn't go with the narrative, he was blacklisted from America. He was an American astronomer, but he could not get telescope time on any observatory in America. Eventually, he had to go to Germany, and there he did get some telescope time. They let him in and gave him the time he needed to continue his research. Mm-hmm. But this is what happens in evolutionism and scientism when you go against the story. Mm-hmm. You go against the story, they will punish you. Mm-hmm. That's what happened years ago when they came with what's called the intelligent design idea. It was not a hypothesis, it was a story. And the idea was intelligent design. And this is when many biologists were looking at the world around them, and they're saying this could not happen by accident. Someone had to design it. There's no doubt, no way this could happen accidentally. But they also did want to go to the next level of saying, well, God did it. No matter what God they want to come up with, they couldn't, because any God would be something that evolutionists would not want to hear about. Mm-hmm. So they just said, well, it was intelligent design, and then left it there. Didn't say who the intelligent designer was, just it was intelligent design.
Right.
Because they were intellectual cowards. Because obviously, if you have intelligent design, you have to have an intelligent designer.
Correct.
So, but they only took it halfway. But even that was rejected, even though it's clearly obvious. There are certain things in this world, even in the universe we can see, that could not happen by accident.
Right.
Many of the chemicals inside your body do not like each other. Chemically, they don't like each other. And they'll push away. They're like magnets where the same pole pushes away. Uh-huh. It's the same idea. Chemically, there's a lot of those kinds of chemical magnets that push away. And yet they're forced together in order for you to live. And so how do they get there? They couldn't have done it naturally because they don't like each other. So something had to make them go together. That was the designer that we know is God, Yahweh and Yeshua, the true God of the Bible. But they couldn't accept that. So even though the intelligence is still around, and a few people talk about it, most people don't, because they're afraid of being canceled.
Right.
Because they saw what happened when other people didn't like what they said, and we can see that happening all about us. Today we see it in politics, but it really got to start in many ways in academia, and specifically in science about evolutionism. Because evolution says things that simply don't make sense. There are all sorts of things you can point out to. One of my favorites is called a bombardier beetle. It's a little bug, only about an inch long, and when it gets afraid, it will, out of its rear end, it will shoot out a gas that's 212 degrees. Now, 212 degrees is a heat of boiling water. That's how hot boiling water gets, 212 degrees. Try someday seeing how well it would be if you put your hand in boiling water, how long you could keep it there. And the answer is you wouldn't put it in there at all, but if you did, you wouldn't leave it there very long. But a bombardier beetle can, out of its rear end, put this stinky gas at 212 degrees. So how does it do it? It takes 4 chambers inside the beetle to hold different chemicals because they don't get hot until they get mixed. So they have to hold the chemicals separate. They have to mix them in the mixing chamber at the same time and then expel them at exactly the right speed. If it's too quick, it just goes out and nothing happens. But if it's too slow, it'll blow the bomb eater beetle apart. And you see little bomb eater beetles walking around with their rear ends blown off if it didn't work properly. And your bomb eater beetles can do this 20 times a minute, shoot out what basically is a chemical machine gun of this stinky gas at 212 degrees. Well, when a snake or a frog or something else comes to eat the bomb eater beetle and they get a face full of this stuff, they very quickly realize, this isn't worth it. I'm going to get out of here. And they leave them alone. And bomb eater beetles have been very successful in surviving all kinds of things. But how do they keep it? How do they know how to get the right materials to begin with? How do they know how to make the right chemicals? Well, obviously the bomb eater beetle doesn't.
Right.
It's intelligently designed to do it. And then it's intelligently designed to know how to squeeze the two chemicals together in just the right proportions and then expel them at just the right time to keep itself alive. And that's just one of the many, many thousands of things that have been observed in nature. There are millions more that we haven't even observed yet as far as things, how does it work? We don't even know. But there's things like that are clearly designed.
Like a butterfly, a chrysalis and a butterfly.
Exactly. First, a butterfly lays the eggs, the little larva hatches, gets big and fat, then turns into the chrysalis. And again, how does it know how to go from being a caterpillar and creates the chrysalis around it, but then it dissolves itself? Evolution is supposed to be a survival of the fittest.
Right.
In other words, you want to keep yourself alive.
Right.
Why doesn't a caterpillar just stay a caterpillar? Because it can't. It's programmed to make the chrysalis and then dissolve into a goo. If you ever opened up a chrysalis shortly after it's formed, all you'd find would be goo. Mm. Well, if you open it up and left it like that, then no butterfly's going to come. It needs a chrysalis to form. And then over many days, the goo turns into the butterfly, and the butterfly forces itself out. And here's another thing about that. You cannot help the butterfly. If you help the butterfly, it will kill it. Mm. If you try to open up the chrysalis and let the butterfly out easy, that's not part of the process. The butterfly has to force itself out. That's part of the growing process to become a butterfly that will last anywhere from 6 weeks to 6 months.
See, I think that's amazing in itself. It's just, if you force it, if you try to do anything, it would die. So it's got its own
timetable that God set up for it to do it. Sometimes they don't come out. Sometimes something goes wrong. That's basically a stillbirth for the butterfly.
Right.
And that happens with animals, that happens with humans,
sure.
It happens with insects. Mm. What's fascinating about the monarch is that for 3 of their generations, the butterflies will last about 6 weeks. And in that 6 weeks, they'll go find the milkweed that they need to eat with, but they also find the milkweed they need to lay their eggs on. And then, after a while, again, same process, egg turns into larva, and again. But every 4th generation, the butterfly will last 6 months. That's so they can fly down to Mexico for the winter. They can fly thousands of miles. Not only will they fly to Mexico, they'll fly to the same tree their great-great-great-grandparents were at the year before.
That's interesting.
How do they know how to get there?
Right. That's crazy,
Again,
isn't it?
They're programmed to do it.
To think about, yeah.
Those are just 2. The bomb eater beetle and the monarch butterfly, just 2 of the amazing things that God created in this world that cannot be explained with evolutionism.
Right. So interesting. Well, Sean, I think our time is coming to a close today. I wish we had more time to talk about, and without giving away your book topic, I think one of the things in your book is the 3-winged dragon, which would beg to talk about science some more. But for today, I guess that's where we need to leave. Yeah, leave off.
3-horned dragon. Just not to give it doesn't give any away though. Say this. Today we call them triceratops, but it's a different name for the same creature.
Same type of
3-horned dragon, triceratops.
We thank you for your time today. We'd like to remind our listeners they can go to your website, shadowtheark.com, in order to purchase In the Shadow of the Ark and to please share our podcast with your friends and family. This podcast is available wherever podcasts are distributed, such as iHeart, Apple, and Spotify.